The stars were quiet, as they always were, until a strange signal broke the silence, sharp, rhythmic clicks echoing across space like a forgotten heartbeat. Captain Leona Rourke sat upright in the command chair of the dauntless Horizon, her eyes fixed on the screen. The crew shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the old Earth code, Morse. The message repeated every 10 seconds. Help us. They are using us. Earth must know. No name, no coordinates, just a set of dying numbers tracing back to the Graken. Expanse, a place marked uninhabited for nearly a century. Rourke stared at the fading signal, unease crawling across her skin like ice. Earth's protocols were clear. Unauthorized diversions were forbidden, but curiosity was stronger than caution. "Plot a course," she ordered, voice steady, though her heart thudded. The crew obeyed in silence, everyone sensing something was wrong. As the ship glided through folds of dark space, the region ahead appeared on screen. A dead star system, 3 broken moons, and 1 decaying planet, scarred, cratered, and somehow breathing. The surface showed structures, collapsed cities, flickers of power grids, and 1 central beacon still flashing. They landed near the ruins, and the first thing they noticed was the air. It was breathable, unnaturally so. Rourke led the team out, boots crunching against metal and ash. Shapes moved in the shadows, thin figures too tall, eyes too wide, but with unmistakably human faces. One stepped forward trembling and whispered in perfect English, "Are you from Earth?" Rourke nodded slowly, her weapon down. The figure collapsed, sobbing. "They lied to us. We were born in cages, told Earth was gone." The team stared in stunned silence. The survivors looked like hybrids, part alien, part human, skin pale and marked with strange symbols. They spoke of a race called the Karth, who had taken their ancestors from Earth centuries ago, used them to build slave colonies, twisted their genes, and left them to rot once the resources were stripped. Before they could learn more, an alarm blared from the ship. Rourke turned just in time to see a swarm of drones descending from orbit, weapons glowing red. The team ran, carrying the injured hybrid girl who had spoken first. Energy beams struck the ground around them, igniting flames and rock. "It's them," she gasped. "They don't want anyone to know." The dauntless Horizon lifted just in time, shields flaring as enemy fire slammed into its hull. They punched out of orbit, and Rourke looked back at the burning planet, jaw tight. She had seen horror in her time. But this was different. This wasn't just war. This was a secret buried for generations. In the medbay, the girl lay hooked to scanners, murmuring names and numbers and phrases that didn't make sense, except one: Karth Dominion. Earth Command responded to their report with chilling calm. "No such species officially exists," they said. "You are to return and forget what you found." But Rourke knew too much now. The girl's DNA was unmistakably human. The message was real, and the silence from the stars. That was fear. Earth had always looked up, wondering if they were alone. Now they had an answer, and it was far worse than being ignored. They had been used. The question burned in Rourke's mind as the ship flew through the black. How many others were out there, forgotten by their own kind, waiting for help that never came? The dauntless Horizon didn't turn back. Earth's official orders could wait, because somewhere beyond the stars, someone had whispered, "Help us." And humanity, once again, was listening. The dauntless Horizon moved through space like a ghost, its lights dimmed and engines quiet, as Captain Leona Rourke sat alone in her quarters, replaying the girl's words again and again in her mind. I don't want you to know." The hybrid child, Hélène, was resting in the medbay now, but her memories were fractured, full of pain and strange names. Earth Command had dismissed the report, called it unverified, and ordered the crew home, but Rourke knew something larger was at play. Why lie about an entire species? Why hide a colony of human descendants? She contacted Admiral Tariq Vasquez, an old war hero turned tactician, a man known for trusting instinct over orders. Rourke told him everything: the signal, the ruined world, the attack, and the girl. Vasquez listened in silence, his face unreadable on the screen. Then he simply said, "Come to Titan," quietly. When they arrived, hidden under civilian transport codes, Vasquez met them inside a deep vault beneath the Titan naval base. The place was silent. No cameras, no guards, just two officers and one trusted AI system scanning Ellen's DNA. The results came back clear and terrifying. Ellen was human, nearly 92%, and the rest, not. She had traits designed in labs: enhanced memory, high oxygen tolerance, night vision. Not natural mutations. Someone had built her. Ellen cried when she saw the Earth flag on the Admiral's coat. "They told us Earth was dust," she said. "We thought we were alone." Rourke's crew listened as Ellen described growing up in underground vaults, fed stories that Earth had died in fire, that they were the last of humanity. She remembered metal walls, blinking lights, teachers without faces, and creatures who walked in silence, never speaking. One name returned to her again and again: Carth Dominion. Vasquez ordered a sweep of old records, declassified files, lost missions. What they found made no sense. Colony ships that vanished 300 years ago, exploration logs that ended mid-transmission, and files marked with redacted names tied to the Graken expanse. It was as if someone had carefully erased parts of history. Meanwhile, strange political pressure began to rise. A Galactic Council ambassador arrived at Earth, smiling too wide and asking too many questions about deep space movement. The Council had always maintained neutrality, but now their tone was firm. "Respect the Expanse treaties," they warned. "Unauthorized activity will be seen as aggression." But Vasquez wasn't fooled. He knew diplomatic threats when he heard them. He activated Fleet Protocol 9 silent assembly. Across Earth's outer system, ships powered up without notice. No public declarations, no media coverage. The fleet began to gather in deep orbit, invisible to most, and still Earth Command stayed quiet, brushing aside internal alarms, pretending nothing was wrong. They wanted to believe the story was over, but Rourke couldn't rest. Ellen had drawn pictures of a symbol burned into her childhood walls, a sharp spiral around a single eye. It matched an old image found in a forgotten wreckage file from 2173. The mark of the Carth Dominion. That file was supposed to be destroyed. Someone had kept it, and someone wanted it buried again. Rourke and Vasquez pieced it together. The Carth had been using humanity for generations, not just as workers, but as raw material. They altered human genetics, creating new subspecies suited for different environments, using them to colonize, mine, and serve. And the Galactic Council. At best, they looked away. At worst, they helped cover it up. When word of the Carth's involvement reached a secret network of intelligence officers, old agents began leaking fragments, images of hybrid children in cages, voice recordings, and facility blueprints with human blood types tagged like inventory. It was all buried in encrypted systems, but it was real, and the truth was monstrous. Earth had been patient for centuries. They had followed. Council law, played politics, and kept their wars quiet. But now, with the image of a frightened child staring into the dark, Earth remembered something older than peace: the instinct to protect its own. Fleet signals flared to life across the system, transmitting on private bands. Silent assembly was complete. Hundreds of warships, carriers, and Black Ops cruisers moved into position, their names erased, their flags hidden. They would not declare war. They would find the truth. Vasquez issued a single command: eyes forward, no mercy for silence. Meanwhile, far out in space, a hidden Karth relay picked up an unauthorized scan of the Graken sector. A warning was sent, and somewhere beyond the known maps, a ship powered up, larger than anything Earth had seen. It moved without engines, black as the void, carrying within it the weight of secrets too dangerous to be spoken aloud. The silence in the stars was about to break, and when it did, it would echo through every system. Because Earth was listening. Now, and Earth was angry. The silence was gone. Earth's hidden fleet moved like shadows through space, dark and waiting, while Captain Leona Rourke stood aboard the Reckoning's End, her new command ship, staring at a cold star that lit nothing but the broken bones of a forgotten system. The coordinates, Ellen remembered, had led them to this place, a field of shattered moons orbiting a lifeless gas giant. But hidden among the debris was something horrifying. A chain of asteroid stations, not marked on any map, filled with lights, heat signatures, and life. They were not colonies, they were factories. Inside, human and hybrid beings labored under strange machines, guided by mechanical overseers and watched by tall alien figures with smooth masks and silent movements. This was the face of the Karth Dominion, but it was not a face at all. It was a mask. Earth launched its strike quickly and without a signal. In silence, the fleet descended like a wave of ghosts. Drones were disabled, comms jammed. The asteroid stations fell one by one, their security systems cracking under Earth's advanced AIs. No civilians were harmed. The workers, once afraid, now stared in wonder at the blue flags on the shoulders of the soldiers. Many of them were part human. Some even spoke broken English, taught in secret from ancient data slates. Rourke stepped onto the cold metal floor of the central facility and saw with her own eyes what she feared most: rows of tanks filled with developing children, part human, part something else, designed not to live free, but to serve. Data cores held names, Earth names, generations of abducted or bred people catalogued like livestock. Vasquez broadcast the images to encrypted channels, and within hours, trusted allies across the stars had them. But the Karth did not run. They struck back with words, not weapons. Across the galactic network, they accused Earth of illegal raids, called them lawbreakers and aggressors. The Council met in emergency session, and the Karth ambassador, tall, polished, smiling, spoke of misunderstandings and cultural projects. They showed images of human soldiers with weapons and claimed Earth was trying to rewrite history. But Earth was ready. Vasquez released the true footage, and the universe saw the tanks, the data, and the eyes of children behind glass. There was no misunderstanding. There was only horror. Protests began across neutral planets. Races once silent began to whisper, then speak, then shout. Stories emerged of strange disappearances, genetic oddities, and slaves with human traits working in quiet corners of empires. The truth spread like wildfire, but the Council did not move. Too many deals, too many secrets, too much fear. So Earth acted again. Rourke and her team followed new data to a drifting black station on the edge of Karth space. Inside, they found the core archive, a massive vault of genetic records. Every hybrid made, every abductee modified, every failed test. It was a history of theft and silence. But before they could extract it, the station's defense systems activated. Traps sealed doors. AI viruses flooded their systems. They fought their way through, inch by inch, until Ellen, now stronger, braver, found the mainframe. She placed her hand on the panel, and something in the machine recognized her. The virus stopped, doors unlocked. The system played a final message from a long-dead scientist, a human voice. If anyone hears this, know we didn't die. We were taken, and we remembered. The full archive uploaded and auto-broadcasted across every major datanet. No one could hide it now. The galaxy watched in silence as truth filled their screens. The Karth Dominion was exposed. Their mask cracked. They had built their empire on stolen lives and altered truths, and Earth, once silent, now stood unshaken in the firelight of war. The Council froze, unsure, unwilling to choose a side. But Vasquez did not wait. He spoke to the galaxy once, calm, clear, and final. We do not seek war. We seek justice. And we will not stop until every voice they tried to silence is free. The last words echoed not from a diplomat, but from the people across the stars. Earth's name now meant something new, not fear, not isolation, but fire, a fire that would burn away the lies. And in the ruins of the Karth's mask, the stars finally saw what had always been hidden, humanity standing tall, no longer asking for truth. They were demanding it. The stars burned with tension as Earth's fleets moved from shadow to light, their ships now bearing no emblems, no warnings, just purpose. And Captain Leona Rourke, standing on the command bridge of the Reckoning's End, felt the weight of every eye watching, allies waiting, enemies listening, and silence turning to pressure before the storm. The Galactic Council said nothing, did nothing, as the evidence of the Karth Dominion's crimes echoed through every channel, recordings of stolen children, mutated clones, hybrid slaves working under false skies. And still, the Council debated. Words while Earth sharpened steel. The Karth had not answered, not truly. They remained hidden behind soft voices, diplomatic masks, but their silence screamed of guilt. In secret systems, Earth's scouts uncovered more forgotten stations, some destroyed from within, as if someone feared discovery, while others stood empty, their last logs showing hurried evacuation. But in one silent moon, orbiting a dying red sun, the fleet found a final warning carved into the walls in crude English. They are coming from the dark chain. No one had heard of such a place, not in charts, not in rumors, and that made it worse. Vasquez gathered the captains of the silent assembly and spoke not as an admiral, but as a man who had seen too many lies. He told them Earth would not wait for justice to arrive from slow hands. The fire of Earth, he said, is not revenge. It is memory, burning bright enough to light the way for every forgotten soul in the dark. And with that, the fleet moved again. Thousands of ships cloaked their signatures, folding through deep space in broken jumps toward the edge of the map, past Council-controlled sectors and into dead zones marked by ancient warnings. Along the way, signals flickered, ships calling for help, messages in broken tongues, whispers of the Karth cleansing evidence before Earth arrived. It was no longer just a battle. It was a race against time and silence. Ellen, now fully awake in both mind and strength, sat with Rourke in the war room, showing strange maps burned into her childhood memories, directions drawn not on paper, but taught through rhythm and sound, patterns that led to one place, the chain. And when they reached it, the fleet froze. Before them was a region unlike any other, 12 linked systems bound by artificial gates, black as obsidian, each pulsing with power, hiding inside the Karth's true core. These were not colonies, these were fortresses, and within them, not just labs or slaves, but entire worlds shaped by stolen genetics, controlled by machines, guarded by fleets of vessels. Without names, the Karth had built an empire in the dark, and now Earth stood at its gates. The first strike came not from Earth, but from the Karth, a sudden blast of dark energy that disabled 5 cruisers, tearing holes through shields and hulls without warning. Rourke ordered a counterstrike, not with missiles, but with light. Signal. Bursts that blinded sensors, drones that mimicked ghost ships, decoys that confused enemy targeting. The real force slipped through the confusion, landing strike teams on outer stations. What they found turned stomachs, living factories powered by stolen bodies, minds wired to machines, eyes that never closed. But Earth did not retreat. They freed who they could, sent the broken back to safe ships, and then turned their fire inward. One by one, the stations fell. But with every victory, The Karth adapted, using old Earth weapons twisted for their own design, targeting medships, broadcasting screams across open channels to break morale. Still, the fleet pressed forward. Vasquez, now leading from the carrier Iron Vow, broadcast to the stars, not just words, but names. Names of the hybrids found, of the dead, of the forgotten. And he ended with a simple promise. We will burn. Away the lies. We are coming. Across the galaxy, neutral systems began to choose sides. Some sent aid, quiet but sure. Others sent warnings, council ships moving to block Earth's reinforcements, ambassadors calling for restraint. But the fleet had passed the point of return, and in the heart of the chain, they found the source. A planet forged not by nature but design, a sphere of metal and core light, pulsing with life. Every signal, every order, every lie had come from there. Rourke looked at it through the viewport, and for the first time she felt not anger, but sorrow. How much life had been twisted to build this thing. How many cries had been lost in the void while Earth waited, blind and patient. No more. The plan was set. While heavy cruisers created a wall, strike teams led by Earth's best dropped toward the source, carrying not just weapons but truth. Inside the source, the air pulsed with strange energy, like a heartbeat made of static. They moved through endless halls of glass and steel, where machines hummed and shadows followed. And then, at the core, they found it. Not a leader, not a throne, but a machine that thought like a god, old, vast, and cruel. It had no name. It simply called itself the Custodian. It spoke in many voices, some human, some not, and it offered no defense, only logic. You were waste. You were excess. You became useful. This is balance. Rourke didn't answer with words. She fired. And when the Custodian's core cracked, when the light inside went dark, the source screamed, not in pain, but in silence. The Karth's network collapsed like a dying star, and across the chain, their ships lost coordination. Earth struck hard, fast, with fury sharpened by centuries of silence. The fire of Earth did not burn blindly. It cut through lies with precision. When the battle ended, the stars were quiet again, but not with fear, with awe. Earth had not conquered. It had revealed. And in the ashes of the Karth Dominion, the galaxy remembered that silence is not peace. It is the pause before truth. The war did not end when the source fell. It only changed shape, and in the weeks that followed, Earth's fleet moved like fire across the stars, freeing station after station, cutting deep into the bones of the Karth Dominion. But not all battles were fought with weapons. Some were fought with words, with truth, with the quiet power of a name spoken aloud after years of being erased. And it was that power that turned strangers into allies and slaves into soldiers. Captain Leona Rourke stood on the deck of the Reckoning's End as hundreds of ships filled the dark behind her. Some battered Earth cruisers, some salvaged Karth ships now flying new flags, and others, smaller, stranger vessels, flown by hybrids. And survivors who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. They called it the Liberation Constellation, not because it was an official fleet, but because that's what the people called it. A symbol in the stars where those who had been broken came together to rise again. In secret meetings on free moons, Vasquez met with leaders from once silent worlds, species that had bowed to the Karth for generations out of fear or politics. And now those leaders looked him in the eye and asked only one question. Will you finish what you started? And Earth said yes. The Council stayed silent, trapped in its own games, too afraid to support Earth, too ashamed to stop them. And so the Liberation Constellation moved alone, system by system, using guerrilla tactics and bold strikes, targeting data hubs, slave camps, and supply chains. But it wasn't just about destroying the Karth. It was about building something new in the ruins. Hope. On every freed world, Earth left more than ships. They left teachers, medics, engineers, old stories of freedom, and new promises that no one would be forgotten again. Ellen, now a leader among the hybrids, stood on platforms and told crowds how Earth had come not to conquer, but to remind the stars that humanity had not abandoned them. Her voice shook at first, but the more she spoke, the more she became something bigger than a rescued girl. She became a symbol of what had survived. The darkest places, deep in the conquered zones, the Karth tried to regroup, sending coded commands from scattered strongholds. But Earth's new allies had learned to read between the lines, to crack their codes and turn their strength against them. One such victory came at the Twin Helix Station, a massive genetic forge the Karth used to create soldiers. Earth forces stormed it with help from hybrid infiltrators, and when they opened the final vaults, they found thousands of pods, not just human, but a mix of species, failed experiments, half-formed life, things the Karth had made and thrown away. Earth didn't leave them behind. They brought them out, gave them warmth and waited. Some died, some wept, but some spoke, and what they said turned fear into fury. They told stories of being trained to fight Earth, told lies about a world that had abandoned them. And when they learned the truth, many asked to fight for the flag they had never seen, but somehow believed in. The Liberation constellation grew faster than anyone expected. A fleet of survivors and volunteers, held together by the idea that freedom meant more than peace. It meant never closing your eyes again to suffering. But as the fleet pushed deeper, something changed. Resistance grew stronger. The Karth stopped retreating and started fortifying. Reports came in of a final gathering point, a place they called the Vault of Glass, located in a black nebula known as the Mirror Wound, where light bent strangely and no scans worked. It was said the last of the Karth High Architects had gathered there, those who had designed the Dominion systems, the ones who had written the laws of silence. Rourke looked at the map and knew this would be the last battle, but also the hardest. They couldn't just strike with weapons. The vault likely held hostages, records, maybe even survivors too deep to move. They needed a plan that used not just force, but precision. And so for days, the fleet studied every captured Karth log, every map drawn by former slaves, every whisper of the vault's defense. When they jumped into the Mirror Wound, the world turned sideways. Gravity shifted, light bent, and signals fractured. The Karth had built this place to be a trap, a maze of glass and shadow, but Earth adapted. Their engineers rewrote navigation, programs in real time, while their AIs learned how to speak the nebula's strange code. Fighters moved in silence, using light distortion to their advantage, while infiltration teams led by hybrids slipped through vents and glass corridors to cut systems from within. The battle was slow, like pulling thorns from a giant's hand, but the fleet pressed on. Inside the vault, Rourke found what she feared. Children, old ones, new ones, all asleep in cryo, their minds filled with lies and programs. But also among them were data cores, full of history, blueprints, and the names of every colony the Karth had touched. Ellen stood before those cryo chambers, her hand pressed to the glass, and whispered, "We remember you, and we came." The cores were taken, the children freed. The last of the architects, those cold-eyed designers, were captured, not killed, because Earth needed them to speak, to face the galaxy with the truth they had buried. And when the vault finally collapsed behind them, when the Mirror Wound closed like a scar healing for the first time, the Liberation constellation stood unchallenged. Across the stars, systems once silent now flew banners of unity, not under Earth, but beside it. The galaxy had changed, and in the center of that change was not a throne, not a flag, but a fleet made of memory, pain, hope, and fire. A constellation that had turned darkness into light. In the quiet that followed the war, the stars seemed to breathe again, and across the galaxy, stories once hidden in shadows began to rise like smoke from old fire. Stories of pain, survival, and something greater than revenge. Remembrance. Captain Leona Rourke walked the halls of the Reckoning's End, now not as a soldier chasing an enemy, but as a witness to what had been found, what had been freed, and what could never be forgotten, because everywhere the fleet had passed, something had changed, not just in systems or in skies, but in the people themselves. Colonies that once lived in fear of the Carth now stood tall with new voices, new names, and across the communication networks, you could hear it. Children singing Earth's anthem in broken English, survivors carving memorials out of the wreckage, and even council worlds that once turned away were now asking to join hands with those they had abandoned. But for Earth and the fleet, peace wasn't just about stopping, it was about healing. And that would take time. Ellen, once just a child, rescued from silence, now sat as an advisor to Earth's diplomatic corps, not because she had rank, but because she had seen too much not to speak. She traveled with Rourke to the old council chambers, where once Earth had begged for help and been denied, and now the room fell silent as they entered. Not out of fear, but out of shame. The Carth architects, the ones captured from the vault of glass, had been brought forth in chains, but Earth did not seek execution. Instead, they demanded memory. They demanded that the galaxy hear every detail, every name taken, every planet scarred, every hybrid turned into a weapon. And when the architects spoke, their voices cold and mechanical, they admitted it all, not with pride, but with belief that what they did had once been necessary. Yet when the evidence played, when the recordings of crying children and screaming laboratories filled the chamber, no belief could defend them. And for the first time in history, the council bowed, not to power, but to truth. A monument was built in the sector now known as the Liberation Constellation, a station of pure glass and steel that floated in silent orbit around the burned ruins of the Source, its lights always on, its name simple. The beacon. Anyone could visit, and many did, from every species, every corner, some to honor the dead, some to find closure, and others just to remember what silence had once cost them. Rourke stood there often, alone, reading the names etched into its walls, names of soldiers lost, of civilians freed, of hybrids who had vanished before rescue could reach them, and of those who had chosen to stay behind to fight the final battle in the mirror wound. She never spoke much at the beacon, but her presence said enough. Vasquez, no longer in uniform, became the first ambassador of the Outer Accord. A new alliance formed not by politics, but by shared scars and hope. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it gave voice to those who had never had one. New education ships traveled from world to world, teaching truth, not propaganda. And every year, on the date the first signal was received, the one that had started it all, Earth held a vigil, broadcast to every star that listened, and during that silence you could almost hear the stars remember. Survivors from the hybrid camps formed their own communities, some joining Earth, some choosing to live freely on new colonies, and others, like Ellen, worked to make sure the systems that once enslaved them could never rise again. They passed laws, wrote books, and most of all they told their stories, so that no child would grow up not knowing what the Carth had done and what the fleet had risked to stop it. Across the black void, old Carth stations, now empty, became museums, places where the lights never flickered, where people could walk through the horror and leave with knowledge, because Earth believed memory was stronger than fear. And as the years passed, ships of the Liberation Constellation slowly returned home or found new missions, but the bond they had built never faded. They stayed in contact, sharing signals marked with the old flame insignia, the one that meant not vengeance, but warning. We remember. One day, a strange signal came through from a distant corner of space, a pattern not heard before, but with rhythms that matched the dark codes used in the earliest Karth days. And though many said it was just noise, Rourke listened carefully and frowned, not out of fear but awareness. "If there's more," she said to Ellen, who stood beside her watching the stars from the beacon's main deck, "we'll face it together." Ellen nodded. "They taught us silence. We taught them fire, and now the stars remember." The signal was logged, decoded and filed, but never ignored, because Earth had learned one final truth in the long war across the void: that evil hides in quiet, that peace must be guarded, and that the stars, though ancient and wide, do not forget those who rise when no one else will. And so, as ships moved between systems carrying food, aid and stories, and as the beacon shined in endless orbit, the galaxy did not sleep as it once had. It watched, it listened, and in its memory, the fire of Earth burned on.